are live at Fante's Coffee, and Leo Fante is getting ready to come in and join us, and I'm really excited because we're going to get to learn about the coffee roasting business right here live with this fabulous machine. I've never really been this close to coffee roasting before, but I'm going to tell you how Leo got his start and what's involved in this whole process, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Fante's Coffee and how it has been so far a rousing success in the Louisville coffee market. Coming up at 5 o'clock, my dear friend Lee Baucom is going to be in. He is a podcaster, and he is the host of Thriveology, which talks all about how your marriage can thrive, and he does a lot of other super stuff too. He's also an author, and he has some pretty fantastic books that are already on the market, but his newest one coming out is also going to be very exciting, and I want to have him tell you a little bit about that himself. Now, in case you haven't noticed, Take It From Tara has taken a little bit of a turn for the better. I'm doing live and local and on location interviews every single week. 4 to 6 on Monday, 4 to 6 on Wednesday. And where is he? Oh my gosh, it's Leo. Leo, come, I took your chair.
Hey Tara,
Please
how are you?
come on in, sit down. Let me mic you up. How are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm fine. You came in
Thank
today
you.
even though you have a sinus infection. So
I sure did.
bless your little pea-picking heart.
Yeah.
Sit back and relax.
All right.
Just scoot back in that
All
chair
right.
and just let me walk you through this process. And I
Okay.
promise I'll get you back to bed sooner than later, okay? Sounds like a plan. All right, so Leo Fante is the owner of Fante's Coffee, and this is an incredible machine. I don't know that I want to know how much it costs, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you anyway.
Well, this is an Ambex 10-kilo roaster, and Ambex is kind of a collaboration. It's really all the inner workings are machined in Turkey because they're great stainless workers, and it has a solid stainless drum, and so the Turkish do all of the internal components. They ship it to Florida, and in Florida they basically take the American motors and drives and put them in, and so it's a collaboration, which makes it really a unique machine. But they're about, starting at about 16,000 and up. So
good Lord.
Yeah.
Is this the only machine required in this building to actually make all the coffee that we're consuming?
This machine actually, it's a 10-kilo roaster. So it would actually do the job to roast for about a 5-store chain. And when I built this place, I wanted to overbuild my roasting capacity. The one thing I learned, being in the coffee business with John Conti and with Royal Cup Coffee, all of my life since 1978 is make sure if you're going to roast your own coffee to somewhat overbuild your capacity so you can grow.
Got plenty of backup, right?
Yes.
So I want to know more about John. Tammy Conti is a good friend of mine. John was a wonderful friend of mine back in the day. As a matter of fact, they hired me to do one of the very first voiceovers I ever did in Louisville.
Oh, I'll be darned.
For Conti Coffee commercials. So talk to me about that relationship, because it's a long one of years, and you just have the greatest respect for him. You say.
I really do. I started out in 1978 with John Conti. As a route driver on his coffee service.
Holy smoke.
Yeah. And so I ran Route 1 when it was truly Route 1 because it was the only route. And we split that route several times as his business grew. And, the Contis basically believed in a young man, gave me an opportunity. John spent a lot of money to send me to national coffee education classes and stuff.
Wow.
I was very active in the National Coffee Service Association, and my goal was to repeat. He is the only person in the world to have received the National Coffee Service Operator of the Year Award twice.
My
3,000 coffee companies in America. They only give it to one company each year. And John is the only person that'll ever have it now because the NCSA is disbanded, but he won that award twice. And so as a young man getting started and him putting his money behind me for my education, I told him I'm going to get that award before it's over. And so actually I did win the award.
Oh my goodness.
I pursued it even after the NCSA disbanded, and it went to NAMA, which is now the organization that does all the coffee education, basically most of the coffee education for the country. And NAMA allowed me an opportunity to keynote speak the very first coffee summit in Cherry Hills, New Jersey. And when I did, my speech was a little bit out of the box and a little bit challenging all the people in the room. There was probably 500 coffee companies that were there, and my knees were knocking. It's the only time in the world I was ever nervous, but you know, when you speak to your peers, it can be somewhat intimidating. But
it absolutely can. Well, I'm going to just acknowledge a few people as we are proceeding through our show here. Caroline Knopp is watching. She says, love Leo, our Fante and Fante's Coffee.
Oh, man, Carolyn, I love you too.
Simply PR. Brad Levy is watching. He's a co-worker at Bridgehaven. Debbie Levitch and Janine Babcock O'Connell, Dan Holler, Maria Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah, hello.
She loves you. Eric Cooper and Brett Howard and Nancy Sweet, Johnny Bonnet, Ian Bottomley, and Bill Veneman are all watching. Carrie Mudd, Janet and David Hedrick. Here's Maria's note to you. Hi, Leo and Tara. Fante's is such a great addition to the bill. Great coffee, and I love the free little biscotti they serve with my Java. Wait a minute, Maria. You got a free little biscotti with your Java? There's something wrong with this picture.
That's so funny.
Leo, I'm going to have some decaf before I leave, and I fully expect to get my free little biscotti.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is she telling the truth?
She is.
Every single cup of coffee, you give away a free
yes,
little biscotti.
Our in-house coffees all go out like, you know, in a ceramic mug that we preheat. We're not big on putting paper cups out. We do all of our in-house coffees in ceramic, and they come out on a lace doily, and all the coffees include a shortbread cookie that's baked exclusively for us with our espresso and some chocolate in there and a lot of butter. So,
oh my God, that sounds so delicious. Yeah. Kelly Rose and Melanie Armstrong are watching. Pomarelos and Jared Halal. Doug Sweeney. Hey, Doug Sweeney, one of our Louisville's finest police officers.
Awesome.
And Maria says, laugh out loud. Ha ha ha.
There
Yeah,
you go.
I'm going to get one, Maria. Okay, so when you started in the coffee business, you were working with John Conti. What was the process that you went through to go from Conti's coffee to your own Fante's coffee?
Oh gosh, that's a long road.
Yeah, but you had something in between there, didn't you?
Well, first, I mean, you know, by John sending me to the National Coffee Service Association meetings, trade shows, getting me involved. I chaired 3 national conventions. You know, you learn a lot about coffee. You develop a passion for it. It gets in your blood. It's like the bourbon industry. If you talk to people in the bourbon industry here in Louisville, they're so passionate about what they do because that bourbon is in their blood.
Absolutely.
They love it. And so coffee's exactly the same way. It's in my blood. You know, I eat, sleep, and drink it, and I love it. I think about it, you know, all the time, and so it really is my passion.
You have a cup right here, as a matter of fact.
I do. Yes, I do.
Show off your beautiful cup of coffee.
All right.
In that Fante's coffee
Well, this
cup.
is our Fante's coffee mug, and it's a ceramic mug, and it's preheated.
I love that.
It's really, really very good.
I bet it is, and it's just exactly what you need.
Oh man, it is what I need
to be able to get yourself all stoked up for this interview.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you go from working in a coffee business to you were in corporate America virtually, except it was a very small corporate America. Yeah,
until I went to work for Royal Cup, which is the nation's largest family-owned coffee roastery, and that's coast to coast. And so that is an enormous coffee roastery. So I went from, you know, being with John when he was just a local guy here, you know, with, you know, mainly distribution throughout Kentucky and southern Indiana, to growing his company to be, you know, much larger. You know, he now is a player pretty much nationwide.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, you know, he really built that business. But Royal Cup, the Smith family out of Birmingham, Alabama, own Royal Cup Coffee, and they have a lot of clients that most people would recognize, like Cracker Barrel.
Yes.
You know, like Waffle House, every Ritz-Carlton in the world, the Holiday Inns, you know,
Very Royal.
the Marriotts.
Yep.
Yeah. So they have a much wider, broader footprint. I was blessed to be able to be part of their organization and to do some special projects for the chairman of the board. They brought me on board and gave me an office down there in Birmingham, and I kind of traveled the country doing special projects for him, and then ended up at their local kind of affiliate here, Consumer's Choice Coffee, which was owned by Bob Patterson.
Yep,
Bob well. Was here in Louisville. So I've had the pleasure of kind of, being on both sides of the fence with seeing a small local company grow into a regional powerhouse, and then being involved in true corporate America and working for a company like Royal Cup.
Well, I'm so glad that you've managed to get into Fante's yourself. And this is one location on Frankfurt Avenue. Are you planning on, or have you already established some other shops that I'm unaware of?
Well, you know, we certainly want to grow our concept. You know, we getting into this at 60 years old to do a one location place, probably I wouldn't recommend to anybody, but you know, we're working every single day to make this place the very best it can be, while we're, you know, exploring the opportunities and looking at other areas of opportunity to expand and to grow. So,
well, I'm going to get you to turn on that coffee roaster. Let me take
your
coffee cup back. Can you do it without standing up?
Yes. What I need to do is first, I want to open this.
All right.
And we want to
look at that. Tell me what you're doing.
Okay, right now I'm setting the temperature for the roast.
These aren't industrial secrets we're exposing, are we?
No.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, no, we're gonna roast a really special coffee today.
Do you name your coffees?
Well, I don't. The coffees actually come from particular countries, and I have to watch this part because we're actually igniting the roaster.
All right.
But they come from different areas of the growing regions, and this coffee that we're doing today is a very special coffee. It's the only place that you can really get it in Louisville is our shop, and it's a Clydesdale Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee from
sounds marvelous.
Yeah, from Jamaica, which is a preeminent coffee growing region. It's one of the best coffees in the world. So
I was thinking maybe you could name take it from Tara Coffee.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we can certainly do that.
All right, while we're getting warmed up here, Caroline Johnson is with us, and she was my first guest on the remote Take It From Tara. She is with the Twisted Pink, so she's doing a lot of work for breast cancer, and we appreciate her very much. Ricky Wayne Burks has joined us. Fred Schlemmer, who's a fabulous doctor in town. He works in mental health. He says, never been there, but can't wait to try it out.
Come see us.
I love that. Okay, are you ready to go?
Yeah, it's got to warm up. It'll come up to 380 degrees, so the roaster itself is going to have to actually warm up. And then once it's at 380 degrees, we'll drop the beans into the drum. The machine works kind of like a washer. If you have a commercial washer, it rotates.
Round and round.
And exactly. And then the beans all are kind of heated evenly with the flame.
Okay.
And I don't know if the camera can see the flame.
Well, I'm just going to move over here and get a little peek inside the door.
Yeah. And so you can kind of see the flame kicking up, and you can see it rising in temperature. And so when we get to 380 degrees, we'll drop the beans into the roaster and we'll start the roasting operation.
Look at that thing go.
Yeah,
what's the temperature?
It's serious. Right now it's 144, and rising.
My goodness.
So.
And how high are we going?
We're going to go to 380 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
To once we achieve 380 degrees, we'll introduce the bean into the drum, and then we're going to roast to a set point of 407 degrees, which should give us a nice light medium roast. And the coffee that we're doing today, one of the things about coffee roasting is you have to fully have an understanding of each coffee and each coffee's roast sweet spot to best develop all of the sugars and compounds that make coffee have its flavor. And so with Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee, it's best really roasted, a medium roast. And so a light medium roast, it really develops a lot of the sugars that way. And so we're going to roast today to a set point of 407 degrees, and then we'll light spec it when we're finished. One of the things I also learned working in the big commercial coffee companies is, it's great to artisan roast, but if you're really, really serious about coffee, it's really important to have a coffee lab. And so I've invested in some lab technology back here, a light spectrometer, which basically gives me an agtron reading. It gives me the number, the roast color, and it correlates it to the Specialty Coffee Association of America's color tiles. So I know beyond a shadow of a doubt scientifically that my light roast is a light roast, and that my medium roast is a medium roast, my dark roast is a dark roast.
Okay,
so.
now I need to have you answer some important questions for me. I
Sure.
was told one time that light roast coffee has more caffeine.
That's
than
exactly
dark,
right.
Is that true? Than
Yes.
dark roast?
That is exactly right. Yes, it's you know, the lighter the roasted coffee, the higher the caffeine content. Caffeine is a white crystalline substance. If you poured it out on the table, it would look much like finely ground sugar.
Really?
Yes, and so and it's extracted and brought to the surface and burnt off in the roasting process. So the longer the beans in contact with the flame, the darker the roast, the more the caffeine burns off in the process. So.
Wow, Don Walker Pendleton is watching. So is Paul Campion, Marion Gaines. Caroline Johnson says, I love coffee. Need to come try the Jamaica Special Roast.
Yeah, this Clydesdale Farm Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee is serious coffee. Right before I came in here, I just printed off a little thing online, and it sells for about $74 a pound online.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and it's not the most expensive coffee I have. I have the most expensive coffee in the world here in my coffee house.
What is it?
And if you want to get it, you have to either go to Brooklyn or you know, someplace in Chicago. Basically, it's called La Esmeralda Finca, and that's a farm in Panama in the coffee growing region of Bouquet. And the farm is owned by Cash Peterson and his family, and he grows what is the world's most sought after coffee. It's the only coffee in the world that scored back-to-back Q-grade perfect cupping scores.
Holy smoke, that's amazing.
That coffee has gone for as much as $380 a pound at auction. So
well, I'm just kind of scooping around here in this coffee room. Is that what you call it? The coffee room?
Yes, it is our coffee. It is our coffee lab. So.
It's a coffee lab, and it's got so much cool stuff. We've got my decaf over here in the corner.
There you go.
And there's some French roast. That's
a dark roast.
A delightful packaging that you have here too. I mean, it's just so beautiful to look at coffee displayed in big barrels like that. And then you've got the almost bourbon kind of barrel.
Yeah, those are all Jamaica coffees. One is Mavis Banks Coffee Factory, MBCF, and the other is the Clydesdale that we're brewing today, that we're roasting today. And that Clydesdale is, again, fantastic coffee. It's one of the oldest coffee producers in Jamaica. They're known for their quality.
And these covered by sheets, these are great big
those
bags.
Are all huge sacks of green coffee, and we cover them up, you know, as we roast.
I'll just sneak a little peek here, and then I'll cover it back up.
Yeah, no problem.
How many pounds are these gigantic bags?
Well, they're 150 pounds typically. We're going to have a little alarm here, and that's okay. That's supposed to be going off. So that's telling me if I'm out of the room, get in here. It's almost time to dump the coffee in. And it's going to get a little bit louder here when I dump the coffee at 380 degrees into the drum.
That's okay, because I have people who are watching right now who are going to give me a little scream in type if it's so loud that they can't hear us.
Now what we look for is a little puff of smoke out of the top of the roaster.
All right, we're going to be watching. There it is. There's the puff.
All right.
And when it comes time, you tell me when it comes time to start spewing out into that container.
Oh yeah, we will.
How long does it take to do what we're doing right now?
It'll take about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the process that it is currently undergoing, Leo?
Right now, the coffee being introduced into the drum, it takes the drum from 380 degrees down to what we call a bottom out point. And that is when you reach the bottom of the temperature. So this roast probably is going to be, you know, in the neighborhood of 100 and maybe 35, 36. It may not even go down that far. Different coffees will react a little bit differently. It looks like 139 may be our bottom point. And then when
the smell is absolutely divine.
We click up to 140, the coffee will start. It's starting its actual natural roasting curve, and there's 140. And so now what's happening is the coffee is going to start to climb. And typically when we roast, we chart every single temperature, every single minute of the roast.
Okay, so that boy who was sitting in here with you the other day.
That's what he was doing.
Tell me how that process works.
Yes, every single minute that the bean is in the roaster, you know, on the minute, will record the roast temperature. And so he writes the temperature down in our roasting log, and inside of that roasting log, you know, we can then chart the coffees and chart the roasting curve so that we know exactly what the coffees were doing when.
157 degrees right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
It climbs pretty quickly. And basically, you know, when you're roasting coffee, it's a sensory perception exercise. You know, what you go through, you know, you have all of the aromas. It goes from really wet grass to kind of hay to kind of, when it reaches first crack, almost like baking bread. So it's a real delightful smell. And you can certainly tell right now it's in the wet grass. Kind of, it smells like wet grass. And it's a nice aroma, but it's one of the rewards of roasting coffee is being in here to really experience the transformation.
It is. I smelled it immediately. Kathy Hill is watching, one of Louisville's finest freelance writers. Brenda Davison is here with us as well. Kurt Lawson, home builder, is with
awesome.
us. Caroline Johnson tells us the sound is fine, which is always good to know.
Good.
In spite of how loud it is. Wendy Lovelace is watching, and Theta King Adkins says, Java Wave.
Oh yeah, hello.
Is that a Java Wave, Theta?
Yeah. I love the King family. They're good friends.
They are wonderful folks. So
Good
glad
people.
to know. Now I'm going to invite you all to stop by. If you cannot get here during the time that I'm here, make a point of stopping by tomorrow and getting a nice cup of Fante's coffee and having the free biscotti that comes with it. It's a little biscotti, but it's enough. You don't want to eat a lot of sugar at this time of day.
No, and it's just a perfect complement to the coffee too. So.
That's true, and you know, my little Irish mother used to always say that when you have a delicious cup of tea or a cup of coffee, then you want to have something sweet with it.
Oh, absolutely. There you go.
What are those Delta Airline crackers that everybody covets? Biscotti.
Oh yeah.
Or no, Bischoff.
Yeah, Bischoff.
Bischoff, yeah. That's kind of a funny little cookie. So I can't wait to taste your biscotti too. So we're at 217 degrees.
We are, and you know, when we get up to around 300 and I'm going to say right around 360, maybe 370 degrees, 370 maybe with this Jamaica Blue, we should hear first crack.
And it's just going to sound like popcorn?
Yeah,
popcorn?
Exactly. What first crack is, it's a popcorn kind of sound, and that's where the bean expands in size and starts to shrink in weight. And it takes a while to get there, but once you're there, the roast process starts to take place fairly rapidly. So you got to really pay attention at the very end. You
know what's funny is that the lights are flickering, and I think it's because the machine is even making the little tiny digital light board shake a little bit. I can feel it a bit under my feet.
Oh yeah.
That's a powerful process.
It is a powerful process. It really is.
I love it.
Yep.
So for those of you who were not here at the beginning of the interview, this is Leo Fante. We're at Fante's Coffee on Grinstead Drive. This used to be a hair salon, didn't it?
It was. It was Images Hair Salon, and you know, Images did business here for several years. So the beauty parlor, my meeting room in the back, that we have lots of meetings and corporate, you know, board meetings, that type of thing. Used to be their color room.
Yes.
You know, all the hair was cut in the front windows and in that front room. This was the massage room. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
so talk to me a little bit about, while we're finishing this grind, what does Fante's Coffee offer to people, as you just said, in the way of meeting space? Because I know coffee houses have become the new offices of the day.
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
There's two ladies, as a matter of fact, right outside, and I heard them talking about textile suppliers.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. We we host so many different meetings, from the Louisville Parks Foundation, the Olmsted Group, to the World Affairs Group. When we built this place, we decided we wanted to really host meaningful, impactful neighborhood kind of meetings. And World Affairs brings in some just absolutely amazing speakers, and we're proud to host their events. The Parks Group, Louisville's fabric is our parks. That's a huge part of who we are.
You're looking right out on one.
Oh yeah, it's so wonderful to have the view.
Golf course.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And so we host a lot of groups and organizations, and we want to work with some wedding planners. We want to host some weddings.
Oh, great
Yeah,
idea.
we just think that this would be a really cool place with the vines out back, and the big pergola.
Yep.
The wisteria is gorgeous in the spring. To be able to host some weddings and to do that type of event here at the coffee house. We truly want to be part of the neighborhood.
Oh, that'd be a whole lot of fun. Leo Fante has a beautiful place called Fante's Coffee. It's located on Grinstead Drive, and it's literally across the street from Cherokee and adjacent to Cave Hill.
Yes, that's true. Cave Hill is, another Louisville treasure. It's such a peaceful kind of neat place to go, and if you're ever lacking for something to do on the weekend, my wife taught me this. You can go down there and take a loaf of bread and feed the ducks and at the pond, and it's just so peaceful and relaxing. And to tour that cemetery and see some of the people that are buried over there, it's just amazing. Harlan Sanders and Muhammad Ali, a lot of our Louisville and Kentucky tradition.
And the ones that really always get me are the people that are not so well known, but the ones that have the most extravagant the monuments. The one is the magician.
Yes.
That I absolutely love. And the other one is the woman who is a dancer, and she's just got her arms raised, and her children created this beautiful
That's amazing.
statue of her, and it looked, from what the pictures showed, it looked just like her.
Yeah, that's
so
amazing.
Cool. Yeah, another old family in Louisville, the Brokers. Leslie
Right.
Broker used to take me up there to feed the ducks and visit her grandmother's grave.
It's a great thing to do.
Beautiful place.
It is.
It's such a nice neighborhood that you're in, Leo, and you picked a great spot for
Thank
it.
you.
What other parts of town would you be aiming for if you were going to open up other locations?
We've looked at a couple of parts of town, and we think that as the county and the city kind of move out more kind of east, we've looked at locations kind of out by the Thornton Old corporate headquarters. There's some properties out that way that interest us, and we think that would be an outstanding location for us to do a second location. We are very fortunate in the fact that I have a business partner in with me. He's a silent partner. He happens to be my landlord, Kevin Kogan, and so
he's silent.
Yes. Well, now he's not silent anymore. But Kevin, has been very generous with me to allow me to have the space and to create my vision of what I think a coffee house can be. And he loves coffee as much as I do, I think. I swear he may drink more than I do, which I find hard to believe, but I really think he does.
So Eric Cooper, who is a friend of mine from way back, but also is a big part of the Old Louisville neighborhood, said we would love to have Fante's in Old Louisville.
There you go. Old Louisville's a great spot too.
321 degrees.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah.
Hardy Ortega's watching. She's one of my best buddies from Bridgehaven Mental Health Services, and we're so glad that she's watching too. I think the people at Bridgehaven like to watch me because they're jealous that I get to leave early in the afternoon.
Oh, that's funny. They're keeping tabs on you.
That's right. Michael Logston is also with us. We appreciate everybody who's sitting in with us this afternoon on Take It From Tara. We are live at Fante's Coffee at the corner of Grinstead Drive, where it's basically behind Lemieux.
It is.
It's so easy.
Yeah, great parking.
Yes.
Plenty of parking. You don't have to battle the parking. I mean, Louisville's blessed with a great coffee culture, and Bardstown Road typifies that. You go down Bardstown Road, and there's any number of really great coffee houses, from Vent to Centergoss to Quills. There's just so many really great choices, local choices. And our coffee culture in Louisville is really pretty refined. And
I will say though, Bardstown Road is tough on the parking.
Well, yeah, you know, to that point, we offer a location that's easily accessible to downtown. You can get off at the interstate, come right over here, get great parking, and if you're meeting someone from the East End, they don't have to come downtown and battle the parking nightmare that downtown is. They could meet here, you could have a great meeting, and then everybody can be back in their office in 10 minutes. And
that's an awesome way to go.
Yeah.
Liz Mansfield Natley is with us, and I really love the fact that people are tuning in and watching wherever we go on location, because it really is, to me, a lot more interesting to be out and about than sitting in a studio.
Well, you're here doing it.
I know.
Yeah, you're roasting coffee today,
I'm roasting coffee with you at 349 degrees.
Yes.
I have noticed, though, it is not oppressively hot in here yet.
Not yet, but it will get there. It gets a little hot. The longer you're in here, when we're in here on a full roasting day, when we're doing back-to-back-to-back roasts, it gets warm in here.
Do you want me to turn the fan on for you?
You can. It would be great.
All right.
I tell you, Tara, if you point it towards the
it'll bounce
the
off.
wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bounce off the mirror.
That's
there you
good.
Go.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Clever.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Clever. All right, you've got it all here, Leo.
Yeah,
you got the roaster, you got the fan, you got the bags of coffee.
Yeah.
So the origin of coffee as something that you would somehow take from a bean to a cup.
Right.
I know you know the answer to this question.
Right.
So explain it to me. How did we get
coffee is the seed of a fruit that's grown on a tree. It's a coffee shrub, actually.
Okay.
It's not even a tree. It's a member of the evergreen family. That's the species that it's part of. And most 367, so we're getting right at first crack. You hearing that?
I did hear that.
So
tiny pops.
At 370, we're going to get an alarm here. We're going to turn that alarm off, telling us that we're getting close to first crack, so we're right there. But, you know, coffee is that seed of that fruit, and so each coffee tree produces about 3,500 cherries per tree per year. You may have to go back to that tree 5 times to actually harvest those cherries, because they don't all ripen at the same time.
Now, when you call it a cherry, is that interchangeable with bean, or is that
it's
the
actually
thing that
a cherry.
holds the beans?
It's actually a cherry, yeah, and coffee is the seed. There's 2 of them in each cherry.
I'll be darned.
And so as you pick the cherry and you pulp it, the 2 green coffee seeds will come out, and that's green coffee, and that's the way we buy it. Of course, it has to be processed. All the coffee has to be, you know, wet or dry processed. It has to be hulled. All the coffee has to be dried. So.
But who figured it out? Was it John Conti? How to take it from a tree to a cup?
Yeah, I think it was a long time before John.
It must have been.
But John was Louisville's first coffee roaster. He started roasting very early on, and he truly was a pioneer in the coffee service operation. So.
Debbie Gober and Brian Yesowich are watching, and Brian's out of town. I'm a fan, and I love her for watching so much. I love all of you guys for watching. We're getting ready to hear what Leo's referring to as the cracking, and it comes as a result of those coffee beans, I guess.
That's exactly right.
Cracking open and popping. Is it like a popcorn kernel?
It is. Coffee is tasteless and odorless until it is roasted. And once it is roasted, it will pop.
So what is this right here? What are these little pieces that I'm showing in my hand?
That's roasted coffee.
Those are the ones that are roasted.
Yes.
So they do look like they have little cracked beans. This is so interesting. I never knew any of this stuff before. I figured you just get, you know, coffee beans in a bag, and then you put them in your own little grinder, and you crush them, and you put them in the coffee maker, and you're done.
So we're getting ready to actually dump the roast, Tara. We're at 412 degrees.
Okay.
At 414, we're going to dump the roast. The flame's going to extinguish, and the roast will come out. So.
Wow! Look at that.
So here's the roast.
Man, it smells even better now.
And that is a really nice roast.
Now, why is it circulating like that?
This is the cooling bin, and what that does is it actually cools the coffee. It draws air evenly over the coffee and allows it to cool down, and it's cooling the coffee as we speak.
I'm telling you what, I wish people who are watching could smell what I'm smelling.
It's pretty amazing.
It is amazing.
So it's going to take it about 10 minutes to totally cool the beans to where they're handheld.
Okay, so how many bags of coffee, how many pounds of coffee would come from that batch right there?
That's a 15-pound roast. You know, the 10-kilo Ambex will roast 20 pounds at a time, but we choose to roast about 15 pounds simply because we feel that 15 pounds gives us the very best, most consistent roast. And so we work very, very hard to control the quality of every single roast that we do. So we use a smaller roast capacity so that each batch truly is small batch roasted, and it allows us to keep control of the quality, which is our big thing. Our tagline is we're passionate about quality, and we do that in everything that we do, from our baked goods. You know, we judge every single baked good that comes in the door is at the very best that we can serve. You know, we use Susan's Cakes from the Cottage Cafe. She's got an outstanding dessert out there. She's a great place to go for lunch. And but we're the only place that she sells her cakes to, because she knows how passionate we are about, you know, quality in every step of the way of the stuff that we do. And so we focus on that in everything from our desserts to our coffees to our sandwiches. Susan Conway, who runs our kitchen and really is my general manager, my right hand, she used to be with the Bristol Catering for over 20 years. And she has a family black bean burger that she does here that's handmade. And, you know, if you've never tried our black bean burger, you owe it to yourself. We actually have great food here, too. That's another thing.
See, I don't think people know that you have actual meals. Talk to us about that type of food.
Yeah, I mean, we do all hand-sliced meats. We do handmade black bean burgers. We do soups. We do salads. We do amazing sandwiches. We have Sonoma County wines. We have a line of wines all from Sonoma County, California. That's where my mom's family's from. And so to pay homage to my mom's family, we brought in all Sonoma County wines. And then my father's side of the family, the Fante surname, as far back as I can track it, my great-grandfather came from Paderborn, Westphalia, Germany. But when you research the name, it keeps coming up Veneto, northern Italy, up around Venice. There's about 60 different Fantes there in that particular area, and so we brought in some Italian house wines to kind of pay homage to that side of the family.
I love
and
it.
So, and then we have beers. So we have a lot of import beers in bottles and cans. We have Guinness on tap. We have West 6 IPA coming soon. Peroni beer is another tip of the hat to the Italians. And
now this would imply that you're open beyond breakfast hours.
Yes, yeah. We're not just grab a scone and go and a cup of coffee in a paper cup.
No, and you're certainly not encouraging drinking beer and wine at 10 o'clock in the morning either.
Yeah, no.
So what are the hours that you are operating?
We are a true European coffee house, and so our hours of operation, we open at 7 in the morning. You know, Monday through Friday. We open at 8 on Saturday and Sunday. Monday through Friday, we're open till 8 p.m. I'm contemplating extending those hours until 9 because, you know, at 9 o'clock in the evening, we still have guests that want to stay. So, you know, we're contemplating extending our evening hours till 9. And so that would be Monday through Thursday, and then Friday night we're open till 11. Saturday night we're open till 11, and Sunday's kind of a regular day. We'll be open to 8.
So how's the lunch and dinner crowd right now?
It's really good.
Are people getting the idea then that it's not just a breakfast restaurant?
We wanted to really tear down the walls and create a non-siloed coffee house environment, which I thought Louisville was somewhat lacking. You know, you go into a lot of coffee houses in town today and you see the same people, you see the same age demographic, the same, and so a lot of times you go in and no one's talking to each other, everybody's on a laptop, and we wanted to create a model that was conducive for people of all ages. I wanted to offer something for everyone, and the only way I could figure out how to really do that was to offer really good food, offer some great wines, offer some great beers, and make amazing coffee. And so that's what we've done here to try to tear down the walls of the silo. And you know, what's interesting is you'll have some people more my age, elderly people. I have one customer that comes in and sits here and reads the newspaper every day. I have a lot of students, college students.
I saw some studying out there.
Yes. We have a lot of college students that come in here from Boyce and U of L and U of L Med School and from Bellarmine. So we cater to them as well. And we're very proud to be able to serve them. So it's truly working. The model's truly working.
That's fantastic. We want to welcome Teresa Franklin Wilder, Jenny Wright, Greg Hoover, Lauren Dean, Brian Hutchins, Arnold Johnston, Laura Johnson Grinstead, and Myra Johns, another fabulous realtor in town.
Awesome.
I'm so glad you guys are all watching. This is Leo Fante, and we are talking about the wonderful process of roasting coffee, which is right now the roast is cooling down.
Yeah, it's just in the cool down phase. Yes.
Which is really cool, but the process of putting it through this machine is quite fascinating. And we started it out, you know, at about 4 o'clock, and by about 4:30, 4:35, it's to get it up to heat speed, which was 400 and something degrees. And then it was dumped, and here we are in this cool down phase as well. So I was surprised, actually. There goes your lovely wife.
Yeah.
Hello, Mrs. Fante. She's on the phone. I was surprised to learn about Fante's Coffee, that you guys have not been in this place very long at all.
No, our very first day was, February 27th of 2017. My wife and I, our first date was on the 27th of December. Our marriage, our wedding was on the 27th, and I thought, man, I've been lucky twice with that date, so let's open on a highly unusual 27th. And so that's
pretty cool.
Yeah, we opened on the 27th, so we're really proud of that.
And a lot of the coffee shops around town have been established for a long period of time, and of course some of them are chains, and
that's right.
A lot of people have gotten used to those. So how difficult has it been to get the message out there that you're new, new kid on the block, basically?
Extraordinarily difficult.
Independent.
I had 2 people today come in here and tell me that, gosh, you need to go up to Collegiate because I talk to people at Collegiate and they don't even know you're here. And so that is right up the street from us. And so, having 2 people come tell me that today kind of told me, gosh, I really do need to reach out to Collegiate and let them know that we're here and would like to be their local coffee house. So,
well, I know somebody from Louisville Collegiate School reached out to me on Facebook the other day about a lost dog.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'll go back and communicate with whomever that. I don't even know who it was.
Yeah,
it was
wow.
It just said Louisville Collegiate School. So I'll go back to them and say, hey, by the way,
yeah,
right down the street from you,
we've got a great coffee house.
Fante's Coffee. I love it. Okay, so the process after this cool down takes place. What are we going to do?
All we have to do is let this cool, and once it's cooled all the way to the bottom, we will do a light spec, and we will see what we came out with, which I think we're probably going to be more toward a full city roast. And I'm going to grab my light spec.
All right.
And we're going to set this over on the table here, because this is a very expensive little piece of equipment.
You told me that costs about as much as this machine.
It was very expensive.
Good Lord. And what exactly is the purpose of a light spec?
The light spectrometer allows us to scientifically judge and analyze the actual, the true roast color of what we're doing. And so it, beyond a shadow of a doubt, quantifies the fact that if I have a full city roast, if I'm shooting for a full city roast, it is a full city roast. And it gives me the Agtron number, which tells me yes, it is a full city roast, and then it cross-correlates that number with the Specialty Coffee Association of America color tiles that quantifies the fact that, yes, this is what the SCAA calls a full city roast.
Scoot that way just a little bit and tell me what color tiles means. Just about 2 more inches.
Color tiles are simply that. It's a little tile and it's a specific color, and there's a color range that when you Agtron shoot that tile, it assigns a number, and that number again cross-references back to that specific color tile. So they've developed a really kind of standardized roast quantification, so you can qualify that what you're doing is actually correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Timothy Coons McGee, wonderful inventor of the whole concept of comfy cow.
Oh, there you go.
With his delightful partner.
We need ice cream in here, by the way.
I'm telling you. I tell you what, you know what? That might be a really good idea.
Oh, that with espresso, affogato, it's an amazing. You put a little espresso in over some nice ice cream. Oh, man. Or gelato. It's amazing. It really is
Tim
amazing.
Tim and Rory, are you listening?
Yeah. We need a really good ice cream program.
They've sold it.
Yeah.
I was so surprised to hear that. Oh, he's giving you the thumbs up. That's fantastic. I love that. So
I think there's a local group in town, too, with ice cream. Branuli, I think is how they say it.
I don't know.
I think they're out in J-Town, but they're a local ice cream maker. And
nothing beats my comfy cow, and the reason I
love
it,
comfy cow.
I love being able to walk to it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, I live in Crescent Hill, and besides Walgreens being the center of the universe in Crescent Hill,
right.
Comfy Cow and Nancy's Bagels are 2 of the other centers of the universe. So I love the fact that we can just enjoy ourselves and be able to walk up and down the street and get so much delicious stuff. Can I get something?
Yeah,
for
I'm
you?
just going to grab the tray
Pick the tray up. All right.
to get some coffee
reach
here.
out and taste it. I'll tell you what. This is a process that I never in a million years would have expected would be so complicated. Okay, now you're going to bring that spectrometer over to where you're sitting.
And it's going to say measure.
Sit back down so we can watch what it's doing.
All right.
And I see Lee Baucom has come in the door, and he's my next guest. He's going to be talking to me about.
And then it says whole bean. And so actually that score is a 39.7, which is a light on the French roast. So we went a little darker than what we thought, but it's still going to be an amazing coffee. So
oh, it sounds delicious.
Yeah.
You know, and the machine, for those who were not with us at the very beginning of the show, the machine is quite fascinating. And you got this from what part of the country, or did you get it from Europe?
Ambex, like I said, is it's a combination of Turkish and American technology. They're located in Clearwater, Florida, is where they assemble all the components and do all the final assembly. But they put the U.S. drives and all the belts and really collaborate with the Turkish and finalize the machine. I was fortunate enough when I was looking for this particular machine to stumble across a used one in Columbus, Indiana, at a little place called Coffee Aluna. And the gentleman had bought it brand new for his wife. It was the identical machine I was looking for from a color standpoint, from a fit and finish standpoint. You know, we could have put any machine we wanted in here, like a little piece of jewelry, almost like a showcase.
Yeah.
So that we could put it under a spotlight and really highlight the beauty of the machine itself. And in this particular one, I wanted a black and chrome with a little kind of burnished copper. And I was very fortunate. When I walked in and I saw this, I instantly told Ken, who owned it, I said, Ken, I don't know about the rest of the stuff in here, but I can tell you one thing for certain. I want your roaster. I said, I'm telling you right now, I want to buy the roaster. And so
yeah, it's fabulous.
We ended up making a deal with him and bought the majority of his existing inventory and his stock. And before we opened this place, I had probably, I don't know, maybe 2,000 pounds of green coffee in my family room in my house. My wife was never so happy when we were able to bring it here and to to start roasting it. So.
Reggie Garcia is here. Cassie Simon is watching from Washington, D.C. She, of course, is married to Bob Simon, who was a meteorologist on 32.
Oh, yeah, I remember Bob Simon, yeah.
So they're living in Washington. They were in the March for Our Lives in Washington.
Wow,
yeah,
what a march.
I was here
that
in
was
this
powerful.
one. It was. I was in this one, and it was amazing with several thousand kids. But boy, in Washington, that was incredible.
Yeah,
to see those kids.
It really gives you a lot of faith in the young generation. You hear so many people, that talk about millennials or talk about the younger generation, and what I gleaned from that was these are folks that are going to make things happen, and
absolutely.
And I was very proud to see them kind of get out and fight for their cause. So.
And I don't know why people are surprised.
No,
me either. People keep saying you're so young.
Yeah,
you're only 16.
That's amazing.
My gosh.
Yeah,
activists are born and raised. They're not they don't just pop.
That's
out of somewhere. So we're talking to Leo Fante at Fante's Coffee. It's on Grinstead Drive behind Lemieux and very close to Cave Hill, looking out over the delightful, beautiful scene of the Cherokee Golf Course. And we've just roasted some pretty spectacular coffee, and I love how this is all shaken out, because we started out at the top, dumping the coffee into this funnel. It went down into the machine. We turned it on. We choked that up to about 400 and something degrees, and then Leo calls it a dump. Took a great big dump to get all that coffee out, and man, the smell of it, the aroma has just been phenomenal. And you said that the light roast, which I asked you at the very beginning of the show,
yes,
is higher in caffeine.
It is. The darker the roasted coffee, the actual less caffeine that it has, because it's burnt off in the roasting process. It's brought to the surface along with all the amino acids that are caramelized and converted to sugars, which causes the color transformation. But in addition to that, the white crystalline substance known as caffeine is brought to the surface, burn off, and now you have less caffeinated, less caffeinated, less caffeinated. The longer, the darker, the darker, the less caffeinated.
And Leo just told me that caffeine looks like sugar.
Yes.
If you granulated it out on the table, it would look just like sugar.
A white crystalline substance, just like sugar. Yeah.
Now, is caffeine something that you add to a coffee, or is it just part of coffee?
No, it's part of nature.
Okay.
I mean, the Arabic and high-grown coffees that we have are 50% less caffeinated than the Robustas. Robusta coffees are grown at low elevations, typically on flat, long growing farms. They're mechanically harvested, where that's your national brands of coffee in the cans in the store that we all grew up on at Grandma's house, when she'd take that big strong thing and put it in the percolator, and it just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger all day. It just
keep you up all night.
Oh my God! Yeah, your spoon would stand up at the end of the day. But
that's what we used to use in college when we had to stay up and study all night before finals.
Yeah,
get that percolator coffee out.
Yeah, it's so funny. And now, I mean, our palates have become so much more refined with the high-end coffees and the specialty coffees, and that's truly the arena that we play in every single day here. Again, passionate about quality being our tagline. One of the things that we are most passionate about is buying the very best coffees from each of the coffee growing regions and bringing in some amazing coffees. It's as far as cause coffees go, you've got fair trade, which means the farmer gets paid a fair wage, and that's a great thing. But paying the farmer a fair wage when the people that pick the coffee are sleeping in the fields, to me, that just doesn't seem quite right.
Right.
So then you have fair trade organic, which the farmer gets paid a fair wage, and the coffee is grown without pesticides or chemicals. And so no unnatural fertilization, no pesticides. Then you have shade grown, which is planted in conjunction with the existing, shade with the existing ecostructure, so that
shade grown
coffee.
Grown in the shade.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so they don't go in and they don't strip farm. They don't tear down everything that's there and plant coffee and strip farm. So it's fair trade organic shade grown now, right? And so then you go plants. And so we tend to kind of reverse that model and only bring in Rainforest Alliance. And the reason we do Tara is because RFA coffees are coffees that, number one, are grown properly. The agricultural practices are very strict and very Trident. But the thing that makes it key to me is in these Rainforest Alliance farms, they have to have ample and adequate housing for the people that are doing the work on the farms. So they have to be treated humanely. They can't sleep in the field and have the RFA seal. They got to have a home. And more importantly is they have to have access to schools. And to me, that was the game changer. I learned this from Royal Cup Coffee. Royal Cup was one of the very first groups on board with RFA coffees. Holiday Inn came to them and wanted a Rainforest coffee. They did that for Holiday Inn. So the Rainforest Alliance is a big, it's a big thing, and it's changing lives. And so it's allowing these people that work on these farms to have access to a good education. And you're seeing, the first generation of children that have gone through the program and have gone to college and are coming back and even doing more and better things to the farms. And so the coffee is getting better and better.
Amazing.
And that's why we do a lot of Rainforest coffees. In fact, I have a bag up here in the window of RFA coffee that we do that we're very proud of.
Well, and it's nice to have companies like you and Just Creations and places that are always fighting for those folks who really need to be fought for and to be given the opportunity to earn a living wage, but do it fairly. James Dillon O'Daniel is with us, Jim Bullen, Tom Boone. Hey, Tom. Cecilia Covington, Carrie Kirby says hi to us.
Hello.
We've got a wonderful guy coming up. His name is Lee Baucom, and he is here with us to talk about his new book and his podcast.
Oh, nice.
I know you and your wife have a wonderful relationship.
We do.
If you ever needed a better one, then you should listen to his Thriveology podcast because that's what it's all about. It's helping you to have a better marriage.
Right.
And he talks about a lot of other things, too. He has a couple of topics, but his books are famous.
Oh, wow.
He's published several times, so I'm very much looking forward to doing that. And when we finish up here, I'm going to keep running, and I'm going to just take your mic.
Sure.
I'm going to walk out there and find a seat. Hey, Lee, will you find us a table?
Okay.
He's like, sure. That way we don't have to stay in here and you can do your work.
Sure.
And so we will find a table and we will sit down and use this delicious and delightful Fante's coffee to conclude our afternoon. And Colin Lemure, one of the finest musicians in town, just tuned in. Hey, Colin, I bet you're a coffee lover, aren't you? Staying up all those late nights playing music in our establishments throughout Louisville. He and Kendra Villiger married, and they decided to call themselves Villa Muir.
I love it.
Isn't
that's
that
awesome?
cool?
That's
How
cute.
original was that?
Yeah.
Leo
that's awesome.
Fante on Fante's Coffee. You can find them online. They have a beautiful website. They have a Facebook page. And the hours again that we can find you here, Leo?
Yeah, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. On the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we open at 8. Monday through Thursday, we're open till 8. Friday and Saturday, we're open till 11. So
sounds outstanding.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate
my pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time, and we'll be back again.
Well, thank you for coming.
All right, I'm going to hand off this whole wonderful experience to Lee Baucom, and he's I think Kathy is probably going to be with us too, his beautiful and talented wife. And I'll tell you what, they saved me the other day because I had a microphone issue at the last minute, and I needed to have something done that was going to save me from myself because I didn't have enough mics to go out and do the shoot because one of them broke. And he came up with a microphone, he came up with an adapter. I mean, he just is really an amazing guy. So this is an exciting time in Take It From Tara, learning all of the little things that you have to learn when you go mobile. And I'm going to follow you out, Leo. Okay. We're going to just move the camera. Which way are we going, Lee?
Well, you can
find us a seat.
That's a problem.
Oh, really?
Seat up in the window?
Are there no seats?
There's some seats, but they're...
How about this table right here? Oh, I don't care. We don't need it to be quiet. We just sat through coffee roasting. Yeah, we just sat through coffee roasting. This is fabulous. I'll tell you what, let's do this. I'm going to set up, I like this. Let's do this. I'm going to put it on this side.
Yeah, you can pull the table over in front of the doors if you want.
Yeah, you want to do that? Yeah, pull the table over in front of the doors. There's no rule.
You're the rule setter.
It's Leo's
That's
rule
right.
setter. And there's Lee right there, getting our table moved over. I love it. Uh-oh, it's stuck on that little vent. Look at these He-Men.
All right.
I love this. This is the best part about taking it from Tara. You can take it from Tara that if you need some handsome guys to help you, they're going to show up.
That was great.
Lee,
Yeah, it's
this
fresh.
is Leo.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Lee and
My
Leo.
pleasure. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Lee, I'm going to put you right there.
All right.
You're going to get on that side. Okay, good. One of these days we'll figure out how to do a
beautiful with the
transition.
lake.
I
It's
know.
gorgeous.
We'll figure out how to do a transition that doesn't require us to move it like that. Thank you, Leo. I appreciate it. Yes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again the next time. All right, we are going to hook that on you, mister, and then you will soon be able to hear the dulcet tones of Lee Baucom. Sheila Robbins Bishop, thanks for joining us. Roy Mullins is watching too. Kim Jarbo is on, and we've had a great viewership throughout the first hour. Lee,
Good.
aren't you happy?
Are you coming over here? Or
You've been doing. No, I'm going to stay right here because
right.
I want to be able to observe. I'm actually going to drop my camera just a little bit so that we can get a little bit better view of you. And I've also learned how to actually balance my camera without having to do too much work. So I'm excelling at certain things and not at others, but you know what? We'll get it. Thank you. I just was telling them how you saved the day with your microphone. You're always good at solving
I've had
problems.
2 microphone saves for you.
You have 2 microphone saves, exactly right. And I've got your mic, so just don't let me leave with it,
All
okay?
right.
I want to just first kind of get a feel for who you are and what you do for those who are tuning in for the first time to Take It From Tara on the road. We are live and local here on location at Fante's Coffee, and it's a wonderful place to get together. Look at all those people. They're studying, they're interacting.
They were until we came
They're
in.
doing business, and now they're going to have to just plug their ears for the next 45 minutes so that they can continue to study without being interrupted. But Lee, you started out with the concept, I guess, of podcasting, which is a fairly new business in terms of, as far as comparing it to being an author of a book, the podcast is something new, and you became familiar with it very quickly.
Yeah, that was 4 years ago now. We're at 260 episodes on one podcast and 220 some on another podcast. So we're good 4 years into the podcasting piece.
Now,
And,
what is the approximate listenership to your podcast?
now I'm at about 3.5 million downloads.
Wow, 3.5 million.
That's a lot of episodes and a lot of people listening.
That's phenomenal.
Sometimes surprises me.
Okay, so how often do you build podcasts? When are you creating them and when are you releasing them?
The podcasts come out once a week, and so the Thriveology podcast comes out on Mondays. Thriveology is studying how to thrive in life, and then the Save the Marriage podcast comes out Wednesday nights, but really is available Thursday mornings by the apps and downloads.
So 2 different podcasts.
2 different podcasts.
And the Thriveology, I want to hear a little bit more about that because it's quite an interesting topic.
Yeah, so thriving for me, we are surrounded by lots of books and content on how to be happy. And I don't think happiness is really what we're trying to get to. I think we're trying to find a deeper life, a meaningful life, a life of purpose. And so thriving is how to build that thriving life, how to deal with what life's coming your way. And so the ology part is the study of that. And so my business card says that I'm a full-time thriveologist, but a part-time thriver, which means that I don't always do the best job of applying it in my life. But that's where I've spent my time studying how to thrive, regardless of whether it's around your own life, your health, your relationships, really how to get out of your own way and build, which is kind of the point of the new book.
Of the book.
Yeah.
So getting out of your own way is something that I think a lot of people have had a hard time doing, and most of all me. And
most of us, all of us.
we've had a lot of conversations about that because I think that a lot of staying in your own way is based on fear.
Yeah, I think fear is one of the pieces that keeps us small. And let's just be clear, though, that what I'm not proposing is getting rid of fear.
Right.
The problem is the role that fear plays in our lives. And so fear keeps us restricted. When we listen to the fear, when we let the fear dictate what we're going to do, when we let fear kind of point out what's important, then we have a choice on how we're going to act. So if we separate fear from the actions, that's where we find the difference between kind of surviving. Survival mode is about fear. Learning how to act in spite of the fear, that's where we start to thrive. It's really not about getting rid of the fear. It's how to understand the fear and move through it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things is just kind of figuring out what do they say? Find this place and fill it, or find your niche and fill it. My dad used to say,
yeah.
Find the fear and move through it.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of scooping around here so people can see what wonderful place we're in. This is Fante's Coffee.
It's a very cool location.
Isn't it fun?
Yeah,
it's right
great.
here on Grinstead Drive. It's behind Lemieux, and it is directly across the street from the Cherokee Golf Course, which is why we're set up looking out the window, which is beautiful. I love the muted colors. There's a fireplace. There's all kinds of wonderful decorations that have to do with coffee. And we just spoke to Leo for about an hour about the roasting process, which was
very cool.
Really a lot of fun. And if you didn't get a chance to see it happening,
I walked into the smell of roasting coffee.
Isn't it delicious?
Yes.
And you can go back and look at it on the video a little bit later and see what the roasting process is. It's fantastic. Want to welcome Eric Cooper back and Eric Elam, both of whom are wonderful friends, and I'm so grateful that they're on today. Eric's trying to get Leo to open up a Fante's in Old Louisville. I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
One out in your neck of the woods, too.
That'd be great.
You know where the Thornton Oil old corporate offices are out there in the East End?
No.
Well, you're going to find out because they're going to try to open a Fante's.
Okay, well, there you go.
So talk to me a little bit about the book. It's The Immutable Laws of Living.
Right.
And give me a copy of that
Yeah.
one, if you will, because I want to be able to look at it with you. This is an absolutely lovely cover. I'm going to cover you up for just a minute, Lee.
That's okay.
The Immutable Laws of Living, the inspirational blueprint to living your meaningful life. That's a beautiful concept of the little whirlpool, the waves trickling out, the circles of water, the ripple effect, and I'm assuming that must mean that everything that you do has a ripple.
Has an impact. And
Yep.
that's actually where we end the book, that we as humans are built to make an impact. And the question is whether we're going to make a positive impact or a negative impact. We're going to impact the world around us. And so my feeling is that we're better served by choosing the impact we want to make and deciding what that purpose and we have in our lives that causes the impact. And so the rules that people break is not recognizing that that's what life is about, of making that impact. And when we fail to do that, we fail to live a full life, a thriving life, because we're playing at a smaller place.
When you first started to write, I think I remember you telling me that you felt like you could put things into print that you had learned, sometimes the hard way, that maybe would enable people.
Every rule I've broken.
Maybe would help folks to learn a little bit, maybe at a little bit more fast-paced, or without having to suffer quite as much.
Yeah, so that's kind of the thing. These are rules that we break, the immutable laws, these laws that we violate without knowing it, because nobody told us those were the laws. And
right.
So the reason that I was able to reflect upon it is because I've been on the breaking the law part of this. This is, to me, it's kind of like gravity.
Yes.
It's always around us. We don't think about it. We don't know that we're obeying it until we're disobeying it. And when we disobey it, we land kind of harshly, and I've got all kinds of scars on my body to show where I tried to disobey the law of gravity and lost. And so these are the same thing. It's kind of these laws that surround us all the time, that if we're breaking them, we're holding ourselves back, we're getting stuck. And the reason I know that is I've been stuck. So the place where I went, I need to write that book, was a sunny, warm, early spring day several years ago, when I went out right at captain's quarters on my paddleboard. It had been a hot day and the grass was growing crazily, and I was mowing the lawn and my battery on my lawnmower had died. And I said, okay, I've got to let that recharge. I'm nasty, I'm dirty. asked my wife, did she mind if I went paddling? And she said, no. So I went down and jumped on my board and paddled out. And so I got to that point right at the creek and the river, captain's quarters up on the corner. And I noticed that the place was full of people who were enjoying the river just like I was. And so suddenly I had spectators as I was staying on my board and moving out. And so I felt a little self-conscious, but I kind of peeled up towards to go upriver, and I was paddling, and I was looking down, and I was just making all kinds of good speed, and just paddling, and I was just focused on the water. I really wanted to kind of get out of sight. And so I was paddling madly, and just was so pleased with my progress, watching the speed of the water go by. And I finally looked up after about 25 minutes, and I had actually lost a little distance on the paddle. All these people are watching me on this treadmill, going madly, not making any progress. And I felt very self-conscious, and so I just decided to make it look like that's what I meant to do, and I just did a little turn and came back up the creek. And as I was going, I thought, I would have made killer speed if I had just gone with the current rather than trying to violate the current, to go against the current. And I started thinking, how many other places do we do that in life where we're just paddling against the natural current rather than going with it? And so we have these places where we're just fighting against the flow, not really realizing that that's what we're doing. And that's where I went, I need to write about this.
Well, guess who just logged on? Kathy Russell Baucom. Kathy is Lee's delightful wife.
She is.
And this book is dedicated to Kathy, my partner and supporter through the journey of life. Thank you for walking with me through this interesting path of life, and probably paddling with you on that interesting path of water.
She wasn't paddling with me, but she was letting me paddle and letting me make my mistakes along the way of the paddling.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the immutable laws,
Sure.
which I think are pretty interesting when you stop to think about it.
There's a whole list in the very back.
They're very, very simple, and I like the chapters too. The first one of Life is Not Fair, which is the part that cracks me up, because everybody is always like, it's not fair, Well, it's true.
They're actually
but
accurate
life is
about
not.
that. But they're fussing about it in a way that they want to make it fair, which is where we get stuck. It's not going to be fair. It's not made to be fair.
Lee Baucom is with me at this delightful place called Fante's Coffee, and welcome Kim Good. I'm glad you're with us on the broadcast. Fante's is located at the corner of Grinstead Drive, literally behind Lemieux, and I'm looking out the window at the beautiful Cherokee Golf Course. So that's how easy it is to get here, just right across the street from Grinstead Drive. And there's a baby here too, which is even better. So we're talking about this beautiful book that Lee has written, and the immutable laws that he's talking about. Besides Life is Not Fair, life has challenges. Life isn't about happiness. Thoughts are just thoughts. Okay, let's hit on that one first, because I think I have a tendency to believe that whatever my thoughts are what reality is, and sometimes it's really, really upsetting and worrisome to me, and in fact, they are not real, necessary all the time. They're just thoughts.
They're just thoughts. In fact, they're always just thoughts. They might be useful thoughts, but they're still thoughts. And so our mind, that's what our mind does. It creates thoughts. And unfortunately, we don't tend to filter out whether that's a useful thought. And I don't mean a right thought or a wrong thought, but a useful thought or not so useful thought. And so we tend to just, if it pops in our head, it must be real, it must be true, rather than holding that out. So a thought's a thought. But what really is important about that is our emotional states are woven by our thoughts. So if, and I'll don't do this, but if I were to say, make yourself angry, the way you make yourself angry is to think about something that made you angry, and you would feel it.
Interesting.
And if I said make yourself happy, which feel free to do, you think about probably the last thing that happened that made you happy or excited or anything else. And so
are you a method acting teacher? Tell the truth.
No, I don't think I could do that. But I do recognize that piece of that if we want to move ourselves into a state, our thoughts will do that. If we're not conscious of that, they will do that also.
Yes.
And so the problem is that we often take whatever thoughts pop in, just latch onto them and let them be our reality. And the interesting thing about that is it's true about our memories too. You know, our memories are representations of what happened. They're not recordings. It's not like you've got an exact recording. You can go back and see how the beans were roasted. It's our approximation of that. It's how we thought about it. That's our take on that. And so when we start thinking back, remembering something, all we're doing is taking a thought from the past and bringing it into the present as another thought, which creates an emotional state for us.
Well, and the other statement that has been made and is so believable is that feelings are not facts. Just like thoughts are just thoughts. Feelings are not facts. Every perspective is limited. Change is inevitable. We all know that, which is painful. The only thing that's permanent is impermanence, right? I think this one is worth talking about. People do the best they can. Yeah. And we don't always really realize that.
So let's go back to the change one, and then we'll move into this one, because they kind of stack on each other. Change is inevitable. We act like it shouldn't be happening. I had you talked about marriages a while back. I had this guy who contacted me. He said, you know, my wife keeps telling me how I've changed, and I keep telling her I haven't changed. I'm just like I was before. And I said, well, that would be too bad. You know, if you're still who you were when you got married, you missed a lot of opportunities to grow and change. Change is the nature of the world. I mean, you're looking out on this change that's happening in our seasons, and we watch our bodies change over time. We kind of pretend like that's not happening, but change is the state, and we violate this rule when we act as if nothing should change. When we act like the change is somehow violating our right to having everything just the way it should be all the time. So that leads into the second one, of people do the best they can. You know, we're dealing with this constant movement, and my belief is that people are doing the best they can given where they are, and that's a very important part of that sentence. You know, I have yet to have anybody come into my office or be a part of my coaching program that is saying to me, you know, I'm just not doing the best I could. I'm just slacking along here. Now, they might say that because they're feeling bad about themselves, but not because they're not really trying.
Right.
They just have that little message. And so we're all doing the best we can. And when we make a mistake, when we misstep, a lot of times we get so fixated on that we forget that we can learn from that. And so if I'm doing the best I can, tomorrow I might be able to do better. Another time I might be able to do better, but where I am right now. And for me, this is kind of where we have a chance of building empathy. Let's go back to the marriage stuff. You know, couples tend to believe that their spouse is not doing the best they can, but doing something to them, trying to get them, trying to do something to be hurtful, when in reality they're struggling with their own hurt and responding out of that hurt place, and they're still doing the best they can. It doesn't mean that they're at their optimal, and that's one of the confusions. People say, oh, you're saying that people are always optimally performing. No.
Not really.
Where they are, given their physical condition, their emotional condition, all the different pieces of our life, they're doing the best they can at that moment.
Right. So when you just mentioned a minute ago, and first I want to say Caroline Knopp is watching. Hi, Caroline, and James M. Green is also tuned in. We thank you guys for watching our show. This is Take It From Tara live from Fante's Coffee, and it's literally across the street from the Cherokee Golf Course. Are you enjoying some Fante's coffee?
This is some great coffee from them.
I'm so glad that you've got it. I'm dying to try it myself.
It's
I have
excellent.
to have decaf at this hour of the day.
That's not decaf. Truth be told.
And they also serve a little biscotti with the cups of coffee, which I think is fantastic. But I didn't know until today that Fante's is not just a coffee shop. It's also serving food, beer, wine, the whole 9 yards.
And roasting on site.
And doing all the roasting right here, which is what we learned in the last hour, which was so exciting. Lee Baucom is with us. He is an author, a podcaster, and a general all-around great guy. Because he helped me get Puppy Pack Adventures off the ground, and still is my go-to guy for questions, so thank you for that. You talked just a minute ago about, you said in your coaching sessions, in your coaching business, you're a coach, you're a consultant, a therapist, an author, a speaker. So did you actually get a degree in social work before you started all this stuff, or what?
No, I was trained as a therapist.
Trained as a therapist.
So at the end of that training, I'd been in graduate school for way too many years, and I was at the tail end. And so we were surrounded. We were in a small house with 2 kids crawling around amongst my big piles of books for my dissertation. And my desk was actually in our living room. That's the space we had and all these teetering books. And I read an article about coaching, and it was in early days of coaching back in the 90s. And I turned to my wife and I said, this is what I do. This is how I do my stuff. And she said, what does that mean? I mean, you're at a PhD, end of a PhD for being a pastoral counselor. What does that mean? And so what it meant was, as soon as I finished that, I started the formal training for coaching, and realized that coaching is kind of a methodology that I could carry into my counseling, but then grew into kind of what else I do. So coaching is a way of helping people find their strengths and growing in that. That's really that thriving edge.
You're speaking in many different places as well. And I think that when you go and give a speech, a lot of what people want to know from you is how to apply the principles of the immutable laws of living.
Yeah.
So we've got a few more to go through. We all have fears. I think that's a huge one, because we've talked about that several times already, but I think fear, as I've heard it expressed, fear is the opposite of love. And when you are in fear, it's very hard to love. It's hard to do things. It's hard to go out and jump off of the end of the pier into the water, and there's some way to overcome it. I just don't know that a lot of us know how.
Well, let's go back to that, because I don't know that the absence of fear is possible. I think that we can act in spite of fear, and so that's why it's an immutable law. We had another conversation last week, and this person said that they were going to do something. And so the next week I said, say, how'd that go? And I was expecting that it probably hadn't happened, and it hadn't happened. And I said, so what happened? Why didn't you do that? And the person's response was, because I was afraid.
There you go.
And for me, because I was afraid, it's not a reason to have not acted. It's a statement of something that's true for everybody, which is why we have that as a rule. We all have fears. There's no way around it's how your brain functions at its most primitive level. It's there to make sure that any threat that comes your way, you identify it and you see it.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight is a response to that,
Yeah.
a potential response to that.
Sure.
But there is another response to that. We see it all the time. It's courage. And so we always have a choice of actions in spite of the fear. And here's the interesting thing about that. If we listen to the fear gets stronger and grows. It's kind of like, say you have a friend who keeps telling you stuff, and the more they tell you, the more you're saying, oh yeah, that's so true, tell me more. And they start telling you more, and you, oh, that's so true, and they tell you more. And so fear begins to make the space around us smaller and smaller until we're living in a very narrow space, only because we've listened to the fear. The way to break out is to go ahead and take the actions that we know need to happen. One of my favorite words is to decide. The reason I like decide is because it means to kill away. So homicide, that side, and suicide is to kill. And so decide is to tear away. It's to make sure that you're making a choice. You're deciding to do something, getting rid of the other option, which is rather than feeling the fear and being frozen, you're deciding some action. And as soon as we start taking action, the fear starts shrinking, because the fear knows it doesn't have our ear anymore. It's still there, still warning you, but is no longer as big a piece. So a lot of the times I hear a lot of the get rid of your fears, and I just think that's a lost cause. It's just you're trying to fight a piece that's built in. You can use fear.
Yeah.
And so I much prefer people to figure out how fear is pointing out what's important, rather than fear is deciding what they should pay attention to or telling them what to pay attention to.
Another great book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway is one of the books that says you're going to feel it. Don't let that be your reason for acting or not acting.
Yeah, don't let it paralyze you, which is a big one. David Lang is with us, Judith Youngblood. Hey, Judith, one of the most beautiful mezzo-soprano voices in the city. Francis Weinstock, who just retired as a doctor. So thank you all for watching with us today. This is Lee Baucom, and he is the author of The Immutable Laws of Living, along with other books that he has written. He's also a podcaster, and his podcast is called Thriveology. And what's the other one?
Save the Marriage.
Save a Marriage. And so both of those help to improve your relationships and to help you become, I guess, more cognizant of your role in the world and how you can maximize your potential. So talk to me a little bit about the development, and I'm going to come back to this because I'm looking at these other ones and I want to hit this first. Talk to me about your development of Thriveology.
The idea came from a book. Paul Pearsall wrote a book years ago when he said he got about 2/3 of the way through it, and he said, somebody really ought to develop a whole curriculum of how to thrive, and they could call it Thriveology. And at that point, nobody seemed to have claimed that, so I decided that we needed to do that. We needed to have a curriculum on how to thrive, and so I grabbed the title, appointed myself the first Thriveologist, since nobody else had, and decided that was my new profession, to be a Thriveologist.
Might as well.
So the whole focus is how to thrive, and what I realized is a lot of times we have an assumption that thriving is the same as success. So I've talked to people, this is about how to be successful. Well, success is usually measured by something, how wealthy you are or what position you've achieved. And what I realized is a lot of people are thriving in their lives who don't have that.
Yeah.
They haven't had that level of success, that type of success, and they have a fully thriving life. They have friends that they love and who love them. They have a very fulfilling place where they find meaning and purpose in their life. They deal with struggles that come their way and grow from them. And those are kind of the cornerstones for me of whether we're thriving or not. If something tough comes along, do we get beaten down by it? And that was really, so my background training in psychology, psychotherapy, basically was something bad happens and we're trying to heal and we're trying to come close to kind of ground zero.
Stasis.
And I believe that things can go wrong and be tough, and we can use that as a way of growing above where we were. Not that we drop down and finally get back to here, but how do we grow beyond that and allow that to be kind of the rocket fuel to having more out of life, to learn lessons from that.
I think that's one of the things that that kind of grabs my eye when you talk about forgiving to fully live, and you also say control what you can and release the rest. So those are two tenets of some 12-step programs. Mm-hmm. And part of the steps is to let go of the past, and then not only forgive yourself but forgive the people that you've had resentments against. How do we let go, in your opinion? I mean, that's a terrible set of words for me because I hang on to things forever. How do we let go of something?
Interestingly, that's the next book coming out. October, the book, The Forgive Process, comes out, and that has a 6-step process for how you work through that. But so the shortcut of that is we recognize that we're getting anchored to painful places. And what I've noticed is a lot of times too, but they become this being a piece of the fabric of their life, the kind of the mosaic of their life. It becomes their focal point, and they anchor themselves to that. And so part of the challenge is when we get anchored to that, giving that up, letting it go, means that we have to change our identity. We have to figure out who we're going to be rather than what happened to us.
Uh-huh.
And so that big piece of letting go is often that piece. Another one is knowing that that's okay to do. We have some myths around forgiveness that get us in trouble, like forgive and forget.
Yeah.
There's no, if you can forget it, you didn't have to forgive it.
Exactly.
And so forgive and understanding differently, that's a different thing. You can understand the context differently, understand the other person differently, understand what was going on at that time differently, understanding yourself differently. So that's different.
There's a disadvantage with having a photographic memory or an extraordinary memory.
There is, but what I realize is that our brain also is looking for the threats and storing the threats, the perceived threats. And so our brain naturally tries to hold on to the things for future reference, our primitive brain. The problem is that the place where that primitive brain is functioning is back in a much more dangerous environment. And so if you weren't on your toes, you could be somebody's lunch, and that would be the end of your gene pool. So our genes are brought to us by overly cautious people who pass their genes down, who also remember those threats But the problem is that those threats now aren't so bad. So you're at work and somebody doesn't act optimally. They had a bad day or whatever, and you hold on to that because that might be a threat down the road. Probably not. But you act as if that's the piece that you need to remember and stay away from, which also assumes that you can't deal with it. That's the other piece of sometimes that I've got to protect myself. It assumes I can't protect myself without holding on to that piece. The real danger, though, of not forgiving is that it gives the other person power that they're not even there for.
Right.
They could have gone on their way, not even be alive or around anymore, and they still have a hold. And so they get the space in your head that could better be spent figuring out how you want to build your life and be more about purpose and impact and meaning.
That's what they say about renting space in your head.
Renting space.
Also an awesome analogy to things. I think one of the biggest problems that many of us have, because we're looking backward and we're staring forward, is life is in the now. And you miss that. And if you miss what's going on around you, then you have regrets. Whereas if you can stay in the present, you don't have to worry about what's happened in the past, and you don't have to worry about what's happened in the future. I mean, what's going to happen is probably one of the most terrifying things that most people can imagine.
Yeah, and we're in this big thing about mindfulness.
Yes.
And mindfulness really, you boil it down, mindfulness is being present in the present.
Yes.
It's really being here now, experiencing what's going on around you. So long ago, I was doing a talk, and somebody asked the question, what if I keep thinking about these things in the past, and what about that? And I keep worried about things that might happen. And I said, if you're constantly tied to the past, that can lead to a lot of depression.
Right.
And if you're constantly tied to the future, that can lead to a lot of anxiety. Well, it turns out I'm not the first one who observed that. That's been observed by a number of people, and it holds true that when we're fixated on what's happened, it can drag us down because we're usually not fixated on all the good stuff that's happened. It's not like people are sitting around talking about the great times they've had. They're talking about the times when things didn't work out and the times when people were hurtful. Anxiety of the future, we're not usually thinking about all the good stuff that might happen, all the good days that we might have. We're thinking about the bad moments that might come our way.
Right.
And so even that is part of that fear piece. But the present is what we have. And so another person asked the question, okay, so you're saying I should never think about what's going to come down the road and I should never plan for the future. And my response was, if you're going to plan for the future, really do it. Don't just sit around and ponder, I wonder what if, and I'm scared that this is going to happen, but really make some plans. Be present to make the plans. And so if you're going to do that, that's great. And then some people have said, so if I let go of the past, then I'm just kind of dismissing what's happened. I think we can learn lessons from what's happened.
Sure you can.
And then move forward from it without being constantly tied to that. But learn the lessons and move forward. In fact, learning the lesson is one of the steps in that forgive process. There's always a lesson. We just have to figure out what it is and how we apply that in our own life.
Absolutely. You said time is our most precious commodity. I think that's one of the things that we've discovered the most as our society has become so much more career-oriented, in that we can't cram 60 hours of work into a 40-hour week without having to pay the consequences.
Right.
And it's like when they, reduced the amount of time that a med student could spend working consecutively. They went from, 48 hours to 24 hours or something, because they weren't operating functionally and they were making mistakes. And so time being our most precious commodity, it kind of goes back to my thinking about the time that I had to spend with my mother before she passed away was so precious. And it was something I might not have had circumstances been a little bit different. So to use the time that we have to the best of our ability would seem to me to be one of the most important immutable laws.
Yeah, so I start that chapter talking about a man who kept leaving my office saying time is money. He had to rush off to his job saying time is money, and I said, it's not.
Yeah.
It turned out he discovered that too, and I tell about that story. But time isn't money. You can always make more money. You can't make more time.
No.
You've got a certain amount of time, and what I've noticed is a lot of time we spend our time, to use that word over and over, a lot of times we spend that time waiting for something to happen. to make it worthwhile, to make it what we want it to be, rather than, and so it ends up being like a dress rehearsal. We're waiting for the real thing to happen. And along the way, we're trading off all these moments that we can't get back. So time flies by, and suddenly, and this is the other piece of that time, we don't know how long we have.
That's right.
And so because of that, we're better off trying to spend it the best way we can now, because it is, in the end, you can lose all your money. You can still go on, but once you lose all your time, that's it. That's your opportunity on earth.
Well, my nephew is always posting pictures of his adorable children, and who are, almost 3 and going on a year, I guess. And he always says, "Stop growing up so fast.
It flies.
Please, time, slow down." And it's true. You see that with children, and you see it with your pets. I can't believe that Gracie's 13 years old. I can't believe Brady's almost 11 and Wyatt's almost 9. It's just almost inconceivable since I got them at 6 weeks, and I know you feel the same way about your pup too, especially when they have health crises.
Yeah.
And it makes you appreciate so much more. And I even walk out the door sometimes and I say to them, "I'll be back." And I think, am I going to be back in 1 hour or 5 hours? And although I know they don't know the difference necessarily, I do. And I want to spend time with them, because you start to think, how much longer am I going to have with these little precious animals? We live in fear or love, and I spoke about that a little bit earlier, saying the opposite of fear is love. And if we have the opportunity to utilize that to a greater degree, to use that concept, I think it makes, for me at least, it has made life a lot easier. Especially after experiencing a depression myself, being able to try to let go of some of that fear and utilize the love that has been surrounding me, and the love that I've had to relearn for myself has made a huge difference. And I'm sure that you deal with a lot of people who are having trouble with self-love.
So love is an interesting concept. For that, we're waiting for this gushy feeling of love. And sometimes love is action.
Yes.
And so fear is feeling, love is often action. And that was my thing about you can either live in fear or love, but they come from completely different parts of the brain. And so whenever, and our research, our studies will show that your brain can't be in both states. There's, let's call it love and appreciation, because those come from the same place. And then there's fear. And so if we're at a fear place, if we do something loving or are appreciative, we begin to drop that state in our brain. It's just, our brain can't do both. And so one of the ways that we can, so on default, fear. That's just our default setting. That's how we survive the world, on default. Not a great place to be. It's a survival state. Love is a thriving state. So if you can work on being appreciative and taking loving actions, we begin to change the state of our brain. It changes how our brain is functioning and shifts us to what can I do and be about, rather than how do I need to avoid and stay small.
Yeah, how can I be of service is something that I hear constantly, and they tell you that if you are having a tough day, do something for someone else, and it will get you literally out of your head.
Yeah.
Which I think has worked, tremendously well on a lot of levels. And you talk about surviving and thriving, Lee. I think that's something that a lot of people experience in their lives, is getting by day to day, trying to slog, one foot in front of the other. And then when they get to a point that they're actually doing well and feeling like they're thriving, it's hard to imagine having ever been in that place, that very dark place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes that's the clarity of, what I was chasing of success.
Yeah.
Really didn't get me any closer, because when you're chasing the success, you pretty much lock yourself into that survival mode.
Yes.
Because I never have enough. I never have enough position, enough wealth, enough whatever. When you switch over and say, okay, what's my purpose? What brings me meaning? How can I make a difference? You make a big switch in what you're suddenly, now you're talking about the thriving pieces. You're talking about the bigger structures. You've moved to acting by moving out into the world, rather than trying to figure out how to constrict and pull in from the world.
Lee Baucom is my guest this hour, and he is a podcaster, an author, a coach, a teacher, a consultant, and 14 other titles that are in the back of this book, which is called The Immutable Laws of Living, and it's just been released. It's a wonderful book that will help you to understand what it means to take these immutable laws and put them to work for you. I mean, you call it an inspirational blueprint to living your meaningful life. You just said something about thriving, and I said you can't look back and remember what it was like to survive. By the same token, you don't always think when you are surviving that you are going to ever be able to thrive again. And you just talked about the switch that takes place when you throw yourself into something positive and doing things for others. One of the things that I've loved about looking at this book is we are built for impact, and I don't know that a lot of people really believe that. I think they feel, I don't know if I want to call it shatterable, easily breakable. Built for impact would imply that we've got the necessary tools at our disposal if we want them and if we need them to survive something.
We can't avoid being of impact. It's just not possible. I mean, you affect people around you, you affect your environment. I mean, at some basic level, you look around and realize our footprints are everywhere. We impact the world, and more than any other creature, we impact the world in both positive and negative ways. And so the question is whether we're choosing how we're going to impact the world. Are we trying to leave the world a better place?
Now, see, I just took that out of complete context because you're talking about having an impact on the world, and I'm thinking we're built for impact, as in hitting a wall at 100 miles an hour.
And it can feel that way sometimes. But the cover, that ripple effect,
yes,
is the impact that happens. So you decide, you realize that you've been maybe not making the kind of impact you want to make. Maybe it's been more of a negative impact around you, and you're realizing that, and you say, okay, what can I do differently? So then you start making a positive impact. That's a ripple effect. Either way, it's a ripple effect. The relationships around us are affected as it ripples out, and so you start with changes in yourself that can affect our family, which can affect our friends, which can affect our community, which keeps on growing out, and so the ripple keeps going out. And I just keep thinking, so there's the picture of the one ripple on the cover, but if you've ever looked at a pond, when the rain is hitting,
yes,
and you see all those ripples gathering, and what difference would it make if we were all saying, what's my way of impacting the world in a positive way? What would be the larger jump that would happen?
One of the things I remember so clearly is when Brady was a small puppy, he used to jump at puddles. He would jump up in the air and then he would splash into one. And he watched the ripples. I know he was looking at them. And he saw how exciting it was, and then he'd put his face down there, and it was just hilarious. So he was appreciating it from a much more interesting perspective than even humans can.
From a direct place, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lee, let's talk a little bit about Thriveology, because the books cover a lot of interesting topics. I'd like to talk about the podcasts, because one that you've talked about to me before is the marriage podcast, and so many people are struggling in this day and age, and I'd just love you to share and reflect on some of the things that people can do to help themselves when they're in a precarious situation in their marriage. And before you do that, I want to thank Mac Black and Melissa Miller-Garrett for signing on with us. This is Lee Baucom, who is a wonderful man, first of all. He helps me with Puppy Pack Adventures and is still a go-to and a mentor for me. But he is an author and a podcaster and a consultant and teacher and speaker. And I've just asked him the big question about, what do you do when your marriage is in trouble? Besides, obviously, listen to Saving Your Marriage.
I like to think that's a good strategy.
Yes, it would be a good strategy, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is unique about a marriage relationship is that we're trying to build something that we don't build anywhere else. That's being a we. That's what I call it, being a we. We are a team. We're in this together. We're a unit.
Yes.
And what often happens, let's say at the beginning of a relationship, there's just a me. And then I see this interesting person, and I meet this interesting person, and it's me and you. And so me and you get closer and closer, and then me and you decide to get married. And the interesting thing that happens is you either move into being a we, where now it crosses over from me and you is a great place to start, but part of the wedding is saying if you think about the vows, good days, bad days, sick days, healthy days, rich days, poor days, I mean, there are not many days left that's not covered.
That's right.
So you've got that, and then the other piece is to protect the relationship from all outside force. So that's it. So we're in this together for whatever else, and we're going to defend against, people or events or whatever trying to pull us apart. So that's the setup that we've agreed to. And so I think psychologically, a shift has to happen.
Yes.
And if it doesn't, we have some issues. And so the shift is towards a we. So we need to make it to we. The problem is nobody makes that real clear. And nobody tells you how to do that. And so early on in my career, I realized that was the goal that nobody talks about. And so I did a lot of work with premarital couples. And this is kind of what we covered, because there aren't, you go to a wedding and in an hour they say, oh, good luck. Hope that goes well. No
good
training.
luck with your life.
No training in how to do it.
Right.
And a lot of us, if our parents made it to that point, so much of that happens out of view and internally that we don't see it. And so we don't even know that's happening. And so many people come from places where there's not even a good model of that. So you've got that as a struggle. And so if you don't make the shift after you get married, which is the time it could happen, you and me pretty quickly becomes you versus me.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where we have the problem. And it's a power struggle. So when people are kind of moving towards a marriage, they're often trying to show the other person how much they love them. They're trying to convince that person.
Courtship time.
Then they get married, and they spend a lot of time asking the question, how are you loving me? What am I getting out of this? What have you done for me lately? And then it's a power struggle, because two people are saying, what am I getting out of this? They start, if you don't feel like it's fair, and so many times I've done this, and both people will tell me that they're not getting their fair share, which is
hearkening back to the immutable law of one. Life is not fair.
Right. So it's not fair. But the interesting thing is, if both people believe that they're not getting their fair share, the question is, where is the fair share going? I mean,
Sure.
And so I'll say, do you think you're putting in more than the other person? And both will say yes. And so then we have a statistical anomaly where there's more than 100%. It's not possible. And that tells me that both people are looking at it from a perspective of scarcity.
Yeah.
And so one way we make the switch is to stop asking, what am I getting out of this? And go back to, what can I put into this?
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
It's a fundamental shift.
Yep.
The problem is that many times people are asking the question or saying, I'll be happy to do that as soon as my spouse does that. And they're asking the question when that's going to happen, rather than saying, how can I step up and do that? So part of my strategy is how people can start that process by themselves. And a piece of that is stepping back into the relationship and working on the connection that has been broken. One of the biggest problems in marriages these days is people have come to believe in the pause button marriage, is what I call it.
Yikes. Is
They
that
hit the
taking
pause
a break?
button. Well, it's really this. The kids come along, the career comes along, all these comes along, and they think they hit pause. And then once the kids get old enough and the career's taken care of and the money's in the bank, they can unpause it and we'll step right back in, not realizing that marriages do one of two things. They either progress or they recede. That's the only two possibilities. There's no pause. No relationship can be paused. If you think about your friends where you hit the pause, you're no longer friends. I mean, it breaks away.
Yep.
And the same in a marriage. And so when you unpause it, you're looking at this other person going, who are you? And what are you doing here? Right? And so you see a lot of times marriages are, the trouble of a marriage is when the kids get old enough not to need a parent, or the career is finally off the ground and they unpause. And then they realize that they're not unpaused. They've been in recession the whole time, and now they're at a deficit.
Amazing. Ron Zender, thanks for joining us. We are talking with Lee Baucom, who is a podcaster, and the whole Save Your Marriage concept in a podcast seems like it would be extremely helpful, because people are now listening to podcasts just about every place that you can imagine. In your car, in your earbuds, at work when nobody's looking.
So what we aim for,
working out,
and that's what we aim for. That's what I aim for in my podcast length. My hope is that if someone's taking a walk, 20-minute walk is often or taking a drive to work, 20 minutes. There are a lot of things that are about that 15 to 20, 25 minutes, and so my episodes tend to be about 20 minutes long so that you can kind of complete it during the workout, during the walk, during the drive.
I want to know about the Thriveology. I want to know more about how we can put our lives into a thriving as opposed to a surviving mode. And are those also 20 minutes long?
They are both. Same design. There are some that are a little longer because they might be an interview with somebody.
Sure.
But generally, I aim for that period of time. And there are plenty of podcasters that go way longer. I just recognize that my attention span's about 20, 25 minutes. And that's also about the time that most people will do a workout or a walk. And if they have, if they walk longer, they can listen to more than one episode. But it's basically a bite. Right now, the Thriveology podcast, I'm going through some rules, different than the laws, but some reference points I use in my own life to kind of decide how my day is going to go. And so each week I'm covering one rule, and that's about a 15 to 20, 22-minute episode.
What's the next book coming out?
The next book is in October. That's The Forgive Process.
And when you release a book, is it going straight to the bookstores? Is it going online? Are you handing out copies like this to me, which I'm not giving back to you, by the way?
You can keep that copy. For people local to Louisville, Carmichael's will carry my book. They carried my last one, and they told me that they'll have this one in as soon as it's available.
Nice.
It's also available online, but it pretty much hits all of the regular bookstores. That's the goal, to get it in the bookstores and get people to find it there.
Are you finding people are still going into places that are local, like Carmichael's or Books A Million or whatever, and purchasing the hard copies, or are they downloading them to their laptops or to their phones and reading them on Audible, or how does that?
This would be a long chase, but what I've noticed is Kindle and other ebook downloads go up when the format of the book fits that, and go down. So they've talked about the fact that the number of downloads actually dropped down the last couple of years. But what they didn't pay attention to is that a lot of the better sellers were cookbooks and other picture books, which you don't want as a Kindle book.
Sure.
When the ebook really jumped up, there was a series that had gray in its title that people didn't want everybody to see them with, and that's what led to the spike. I think generally the ebook thing is pretty consistent these days. Some people still want to hold the book in the hand, and some people want it, and so we make both available. I think that you're trying to be everywhere that anybody wants to read. You make it available.
Jenny Chappelle, thanks for tuning back in. I know a lot of people were watching me roast coffee, and they've come back to see us with Lee Baucom, who is a wonderful speaker, and I'm watching the baby over there, and it's the cutest thing. You said just a minute ago, Lee, that there's no handbook that comes with marriage, and there sure isn't a handbook that comes with a baby. And what is that a critical point for people who are getting married, is to figure out when it's going to happen, when they're going to have a child, what the circumstances are going to be. I would imagine that it would be very, very challenging to just have one pop up.
Well, they don't pop up.
and not be planned for in some regard.
Yeah. So they give you several months warning at least. So
at least 9.
Well, by the time you find out, sometimes not. But you have at least to think about that. I do think that it's a growth point for couples. Really, there's some stress points in a marriage that allow a couple to see whether they're moving towards being a we or not, and having kids is one of them. This is not, so just to clarify, being a we doesn't mean you have a mind meld where you only think about the same thing. I believe that a we happens when two people bring their best thoughts and their best self to that. So I don't think that parents have to agree. There are some things that it's good to agree about, but I think individuals parent differently than each other, and that's okay, as long as they both are able to support that. That's being a we, of saying, okay, you bring this strength in and I bring this strength in, and that really is an important part of marriage. Complementarity, how we balance each other out. And so a lot of times couples spend a lot of time fighting about how they both have to come to the same place of parenting. It's not going to happen.
Right.
It's just not, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be that way. It has to be about support of each other and finding a place to move towards that is at least consistent for that child.
Tidbit of advice, just one, as to how to make their lives thrive as opposed to survive, which is part of Thriveology. What would that tidbit be?
A core piece for me is anytime we can recognize a thought's a thought. I mean, that we talked about that earlier, but that changes perspective so much. You know, when you've got this thought swirling around and you're able to step back and go, okay, that's just a thought. Suddenly you're able to decide whether you want to hold on to that or really let it go.
That's the key right there. All right, I'm going to pop into the frame with you here for a second because I want everybody to know that Lee's my buddy. Thanks, Kathy, for letting him be with us today, and happy belated birthday.
Well, thank you.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
I'm going to be live at Animal House, which is the adoption center for Louisville Metro Animal Services, on Wednesday for Wagon Wednesday, and I will also be joined by Jonda Ford, who is a fabulous movement specialist, and she's doing a lot with seniors right now, helping with dance and movement and all kinds of stuff. Cool. So join us there on Wednesday from 4 to 6 with Wagon Wednesday, continuing Take It From Tara. And once again, Lee, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you. Y'all, I'll see you on Wednesday. Have a great night, and thanks for tuning in to Take It From Tara on location.